Hi friends, welcome to another video on Tutorials Point with me Richa. And today in this aviation module segment we will talk about food and hygiene. Well, this segment might make you a little hungry because we are going to talk in detail about food, the different kinds of food, and how catering plays a very essential and important role into the aviation industry. So let's see friends, what is there on the agenda today. We'll talk about what is in-flight catering and the different protocols and guidelines to be followed by caterers. We'll talk about the guidelines for air catering, sanitization at the in-flight catering and how sanitization is very important, loading and transportation till the aircraft, special type of in-flight meals. So that is what we're going to cover in today's module on food and hygiene. Well, talking about air catering, what exactly is air catering? It is a flight, rather it's a kitchen inside a flight, and all this food and all the meals gets prepared by a special catering service unit which is appointed by the particular airline. In-flight meal catering refers to the provision of a meal service for each and every passenger during the flight. This service is typical of long hours or long duration of flights. The complexity of the meal service varies by class of passenger service as well as the final destination. So friends, what we're really saying here is it depends on how long the flight is, the duration of the flight, because more longer the flight, more the different kinds of meals served to the passenger. Also, we are looking into different classes of people. So, passengers seated in a first class or a business class have a separate meal service. With respect to passengers who are sitting in the economy class, they have a different kind of service or the different kind of meals given out to them. Let's see what certain protocols are prior to departure for these air catering services. They need to have a final passenger load or the passenger count, and this is something that they take from the ground staff of that particular airline. Information concerning how many tickets are sold for that particular airline or destination. Passengers who have checked in and number of standby passenger. Well, it can be disastrous if any passenger on board is denied his meal because of shortage of meal. If he has asked for veg or non-vegetarian meal and he does not get that, he can really get upset, and you don't want to upset a passenger inside a flight. So well, this is something that's really important for catering industry as well as the airline industry to make sure these are kept into account while they are making the meal for that particular flight. Well, let's talk about in specific air catering with respect to India. The boom in air travel in India is adding a new fizz to the in-flight catering business. Well, last year around 17 million people had traveled by domestic airlines and 8.8 million people had traveled by international airlines. That took to the international skies. They are an indication of the kind of size that we are booming into in terms of aviation. Now, well, if aviation is booming, definitely we are looking at meal service also increasing. So conservatively, an estimation is given that meal uplift service business is worth by 160 to 170 crores, and that's a big number, and this is supposed to increase in the times or in the coming years. This number is supposed to even increase further because passengers are definitely going to travel more and more by air. Well, we are talking about guidelines for air catering. Now, in terms of air catering, there are certain rules and regulations which each and every air caterer needs to follow. So let's look at them in detail. Certain guidelines are it should be located with the proximity of the airport. Preferably, they are looking at the catering service being very close to the airport so that they are able to get the meals as soon as it's time for takeoff for an airline. In a good locality, taking into consideration account accessibility, immediate environment, approach, etc. So what we are really saying is the catering business needs to be very close to the aircraft or the airport area. It should have a valid license. It should have certificate proving that they are good at their catering business. The facility should be of a reasonable size and dimension. So you don't want your meal to get prepared in a very limited, shady kind of a place. You want a bigger dimension or a warehouse or a stock place where these meals are made. It should have sufficient segregated cold storage as well as deep freezers. That's a requirement which catering business needs to have. It should have a record of temperature, medical policy, equipments and certain hygiene factors which they need to keep in mind. Well, let's talk about the in-flight kitchen catering unit. As you can see over here, the equipments, the people, the kind of trays, the kind of tables, everything is very humongous. Sitting into an airline, having a meal, you must have never ever imagined that this is the kind of setup which is there in terms of, the kind of business that we are looking at. For meal service, it gets prepared in such huge kitchen. Let's look at certain responsibility for these caterers. The standardized recipes are there. Well, every airline gives a set menu to these catering people that this is what they want on these specific days, and these are standardized recipes. Food safety from a biological or rather microbiological perspective. The various types of passengers, establishing that adequate provision is made for special kind of diets, keeping religion in mind, keeping ethnic meals and vegetarians. Whatever meal a passenger wants, the airline should be able to give it to him with regards to vegetarian, non-vegetarian and different special meals which we will talk about in a later slide. The capacities or capabilities of the flight kitchen, its labor and equipment. Every catering business or in-flight caterer should have a lot of laborers, should have the maximum number of equipment so as to give the best service to the airline. And the cost factor needs to be borne in mind. The cost factor is decided between the catering vendor as well as the airline. Sanitization, my friends, is very essential part of food and hygiene business. Well, when we talk about going in an airline, getting a meal, and if you find a piece of hair or an insect inside your meal, it can be really disastrous and you will give a very negative feedback about that particular airline. So sanitation plays a very important role, and hence it's very important that all the laborers are wearing a shower cap as well as having gloves in their hands while they are preparing these foods, for the simple fact that you do not want to compromise on the passengers' safety with regards to eating any insect while they're eating their meals on board. Well, loading and transportation of carts happen after all the meals are made by the laborers. They put the entire meal into a tray which has all the accomplishments like butter, jam, a coffee cup or a tea cup, the meal that has to be carried along with the cutlery set, dessert, etc. All this put in a tray is put inside these carts. As you can see, these carts have runners, and in each runner you can put a maximum of 4 trays. So these are packed and loaded and then it is taken to the flight. Well friends, let's look at certain special meals which are offered to passenger depending upon their availability and depending on the need of the passenger. Well, there are baby food or baby infant food for small children because they cannot really have spicy food. There is a low fiber meal which is low on fiber, diabetic meal for people who have sugar problems and diabetes, Jain meal for complete vegetarian people who do not even have onions and garlic, so that for them Jain meal is uploaded. There is fruit meal for people who are probably fasting or not wanting to eat any meal. They have a fruit platter or a fruit meal. There is a gluten-free meal for those people who are allergic or have any kind of reaction to gluten. So that's a kind of meal uploaded for them. There is a high fiber meal which is really high on fiber for people who are really health conscious. And there is a Muslim meal. So well friends, these are different kinds of special meals, and depending on the passenger need, it can be given to these people. Now only one thing you need to keep in mind, passengers need to book their special meals while they are booking their ticket for that particular airline and destination. Friends, let's look at a complete flow chart of how exactly the food travels from the in-flight kitchen to the flight area. So look very carefully. You have the food reception and two parts of it, the cold storage and the dry storage. The dry storage has things which are not really having any kind of liquids. It's completely solid. Then the food pre-preparation happens wherein thawing is done. Now what exactly is thawing? Thawing is also known as defrosting, wherein you're changing a frozen solid to a liquid state by warming it little by little time. After thawing, what happens is it goes to either the hot kitchen or the chilled storage depending on the need for that particular meal. After the hot kitchen, it goes to chilled blasters or the blast chillers, wherein it has chilled storage kept under very minus degrees of centigrade so that the food is really nicely thawed. Then it goes to the hot kitchen assembly wherein everything is assembled together, and then the tray assembly happens wherein everything is put on the tray including the cutlery, the accomplishments and everything else. From here it goes to the chilled storage and then it is dispatched wherein it goes to the flight for loading. Coming to the chilled storage part, for those food which have to be really into chilled places or chilled area, after that it goes to cold kitchen assembly, not to the hot kitchen assembly, and after that it is put into a tray, assembled into a tray, follows a similar route of going to chilled storage, going to the dispatch and finally getting uploaded inside the flight as a catering unit. Well, friends, this can definitely make you really hungry. So this is the kind of food platter which is given to passengers on board the aircraft. As you can see, there are different kinds of accomplishments which are there, and it is really decorated in a nice way to make it pleasing for the passengers to have their food. As somebody very well mentioned, you first eat with your eyes and then with your mouth. So the food presentation needs to look really beautifully assembled together. Friends, that brings us to a conclusion on this particular module under aviation segment of food and hygiene. This segment we have spoken a lot in detail about the different kind of food, the meals, how catering happens, what is the flow chart which every catering business needs to keep in mind. I do hope you have enjoyed listening to this, and I'm sure you must have felt really hungry looking at these beautiful pictures shown on the slides. Thank you for watching us. Keep watching, more videos coming your way. Till then, bye-bye.